I mean, I like Jason. He's a nice guy too.
It was tough for Jason to come in and fill the spot, you know, not even comparing them as players, but it's just even a personality. I think that was more than anything, you know, because their styles are different. You know, and Jason does his thing, Cliff was great in his own way, but the personality, you just couldn't, you know, you couldn't match that.
If you want to make comparisons between him and Cliff, he's more of like a picking bassist and stuff like that, which is fine, I guess, but if you had come from someone like Cliff, who was like all fingers and just everywhere, I think you'd want to carry that on.
Despite the constant bullying Jason received in his early months in Metallica, the new lineup gelled and their first music together appeared in the summer of 1987 on the Garage Days Revisited EP, recorded in Lars's garage in San Francisco.
Now you've got to remember where they were at this time. Cliff Burton had just died, and to a large proportion of Metallica fans, the band were dead as well. They didn't know how Metallica were going to carry on, if they could carry on.
Playing bass guitar for heavy metal group Metallica, Jason Newsted!
They found Jason Newsted, who'd been formerly in Flotsam and Jetsam, got him in the band, and then faced the problem. How do you get this guy accepted by the fans? The answer is you don't try and get him accepted. He will be or he won't be. But they felt to go straight in and make an album with new material would have been asking for trouble. They wanted a buffer, and what better buffer than do a record with Jason, but to do a record of known songs, but aren't their own, so they don't immediately get criticised for the style and quality of the new material. This is almost like they're exposing their roots. So you've got Budgie, Diamond Head, Killing Joke, the Misfits, and a Scottish band from the new wave of British heavy metal called Holocaust. And they came out with this EP and said, this is Jason Newsted, please welcome him to the fold, but these aren't our own songs, this is a covers album. Of course, in this day and age, everybody does covers album. At the time, people were going, what on earth, this is crazy. But it was a brilliant move because it allowed Jason to ease into the band without feeling the pressure of everybody saying, oh, the new material sucks, when you compare it to Cliff's material. Because how could you argue with classics like Crash Course and Brain Surgery by Budgie, or The Wait by Killing Joke, or Helpless by Diamond Head? You couldn't. So it's a very shrewd move.
After this promising start, it was a surprise that when the next full Metallica album, And Justice for All, appeared in 1988, it contained almost no bass. James and Lars had asked the mixers to remove it almost completely. Add to this the fact that the album was too technical in its arrangements for most fans, and it's clear that something of a crossroads was approaching for Metallica.
I interviewed Jason myself a couple of years ago, and I asked him why there's no bass on And Justice for All. And although he didn't want to badmouth his former colleagues in Metallica, he explained that what had happened during the mixing process was that Lars and James had gone back and said to the mixers, take the bass down to where you can just about hear it, and then take off half a dB. So basically all you can hear is a little bit of clicking of Jason's plectrum and not much else. And I asked Jason why Lars and James had felt the need to do this. I mean, he's an amazing bass player, he was a popular guy, and he had a long answer for me, but by and large it turned out that Lars and James were a little bit unconfident in his skills in the wake of Cliff.
And Justice for All was a pretty good heavy album, you know. Some people say it was the beginning of the end, you know, but you know, at the time I couldn't really get into Justice for All, but now actually I enjoy listening to that album when I hear it now.
Jason just brought a whole different feel to the band. He played with a pick instead of his fingers, so some of the stuff was tighter, but unfortunately you can't really hear his bass at all on Justice for All. If you look at the back cover of the album, you can see he looks kind of pissed about that.
Well, that's when they were officially headliners. They did their first national headlining tour, and that's basically when they really were established as probably the biggest metal band in the world. there was no stopping them.
It was time for a change of direction. In 1990, Metallica had a meeting with well-known producer Bob Rock, who had worked on successful albums by Motley Crue and The Cult. Rock told Metallica that in his opinion, they had never captured on record the intensity of their live shows. After some discussion, Lars and James decided to bring him on board for the next record. It was a decision that would shape their entire career.
Rod Smallwood, Iron Maiden's manager, once I think summed up very shrewdly what happens with big metal bands. Judas Priest was Screaming for Vengeance, Iron Maiden around the time of Peace of Mind, Pantera when they did Vulgar Display of Power, all had the capacity to step into the big league commercially by accepting what you had to do to step up, i.e. slightly smooth your sound out, make slightly shorter songs with obvious melodies. None of those three either were prepared to do it or could do it, therefore they never stepped into the really big time with the big sales. Metallica did. Metallica made the step from Master and Puppets and And Justice for all, where they're hovering around 700,000-800,000 sales in America, to the Black Album, which goes beyond 10 million.
Released in August 1991, the Black Album, as it quickly became known, was an international hit, going on to sell over 15 million copies. Its secret was its radio-friendly songs and Bob Rock's heavy, clean production.
Commercial songs, because there were songs with melodies, albeit still driven by guitar. They also made a choice of working with a producer who was used to working on those sort of songs. Bob Rock, who'd worked with Aerosmith, he'd worked with Bon Jovi, he'd worked with a lot of the big commercial bands, Motley Crue. Therefore, he was a man who understood how to bring out the best in songs. That's what Metallica wanted.
Metallica spent a year with Bob Rock recording the Black Album. And looking back on that, you sort of understand why. Because it sounds so different from anything they'd done before. For starters, there was a huge bass track. He'd brought Jason's bass up, to the point where I think Jason was secretly quite pleased after the fiasco of the previous album.
Bob Rock did a great production job on it, and there's just some really good songs. I mean, that was probably the strength. You know, people like talk about all the brutal heaviness of Kill 'Em All. What happened was Metallica got better and better in their songs. I mean, you listen to Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets. Those are just really, really good songs. And the Black Album, again, really good songs.
Metallica had deliberately avoided the over-complex structures of the songs on previous albums and stripped everything down to its basic components. The critics loved it, although some old-school fans mourned the lack of the speedy thrash metal elements that had made albums such as Kill 'Em All and Master of Puppets so exciting.
A lot of people hate the Black Album, even though it was a very successful. I mean, even